All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's do this. It is Tuesday, and you know what that means. It's time to do the Tao now. Reading from Dr. Wayne W. Dyer's Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life. And it really is true, ladies and gentlemen. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at and experience change for you. Living the Wisdom of the Tao is the subtitle to this book, and it's a book that I recommend everybody gets to have for yourself on your shelf. And if you don't have a bookshelf yet, start building one. And where is there any better place to start than with this book? I have it linked in the comments below. And today's verse, ladies and gentlemen, is living without force, is what Dr. Wayne Dyer titles today's verse. It is really just the 30th verse of the Tao Te Ching. Living without force. I'm so interested to see where this goes. And without further ado, let's dive right into the 30th verse of the Tao Te Ching, ladies and gentlemen. And we woke up the cat, it seems like. One who would guide a leader of men in the uses of life will warn him against the use of arms for conquest. Weapons often turn upon the wielder. Where armies settle, nature offers nothing but briars and thorns. After a great battle, it has been fought. The land is cursed and the crops fail. The earth lies stripped of its motherhood. After you have attained your purpose, you must not parade your success. You must not boast of your ability. You must not feel proud. You must rather regret that you had not been able to prevent the war. You must never think of conquering others by force. Whatever strains with force will soon decay. It is not attuned to the way. Not being attuned to the way, its end comes all too soon. Wow. Fascinating, ladies and gentlemen. And see, this is kind of the tone of the Tao changing over the course of this book, or over the course of these verses. And it's so fascinating, the different topics that come up. This one talking about armies and war and weapons and things. That what stood out to me is weapons often turn upon the wielder. And where armies settle, the earth is stripped of its motherhood or its natural beauty. After you have attained your purpose, you must not parade your success, which is also interesting. And then the last bit there, whatever is strained with force will soon decay. That makes me think of Power versus Force by Dr. David Hawkins. Maybe one day we'll get into that book. If you've never heard of it before, just look up a brief description. It's a wonderful book that goes along with what it is we talk about here, ladies and gentlemen. The levels of consciousness and the great force, the great way that we're trying to understand and discover each day. And each time we do one of these videos. So the last bit there is not being attuned to the way. Its end comes all too soon. Now let's dive right into what Wayne Dyer had to say about this 30th verse of the Tao Te Ching and see what we can learn and apply into our lives so that we can live at a higher level. Right, Kitty? Living without force. If you were to explicitly follow the advice of this 30th verse of the Tao Te Ching, Wayne Dyer begins, you'd be in a position to have a conflict-free existence. Imagine that. If our entire global population understood and lived the directives of this chapter of the Tao Te Ching, we'd finally be free of battle-related stress, along with the ravages that war has spread across our planet since we began keeping his historical records. Isn't it funny that I stopped on the his part? There just happened to be, going from one side of the page to the other, but historical records. As the 29th verse wisely instructed, there's a time for everything. Yes. Yes. That's such a great, see, that goes back to one of my more favorite themes. As the 29th verse wisely instructed, there is a time for everything. Could this be the time for living without force in the way that is being described here, ladies and gentlemen, for living without battles and, conflict and all these things that we seem to create out of our lower levels. Now, let us continue before I get off topic too much. Wayne Dyer continues, here's my impression of what's being offered to us in this verse. Force creates a counter force. And this exchange goes on and on until all-out war is in progress. Once war has begun, dissemination and famine results because the land cannot produce crops. Now, when you create war in your personal life, it produces a dearth of love, a lack of love, kindness, an inability to cultivate love, kindness, and joy, which leaves you and everyone around you stripped of what Wayne Dyer describes as divine motherhood. That was a powerful sentence there, ladies and gentlemen. If you didn't catch that, and if you didn't feel it, go back 1 minute and re-get that, because when you do these things in your life, in your personal life, see, this is what's key about this knowledge, is you can be talking about war and what armies and the famine and all of this stuff, but there's metaphors in the macro and in the micro, in the big world and in each individual's life in a metaphorical way. Now, when you create war in your personal life, yes, which leaves you and everyone around you. Lao-tzu is encouraging you to look for an alternative force for settling disputes. If you can find no other option, then you're encouraged to abandon any reference to yourself as winning or conquering. Interesting. Force includes any use of physical or mental abuse in which the weapons of hatred and intolerance are applied. There will always be a counterforce, and what you've opted to do isn't attuned to the way. This means that you ultimately lose. I think if what you opted to do isn't attuned to the way, this means that you'll ultimately lose, especially when you consider that Martin Luther King Jr. once observed that the only way to convert an enemy to a friend is through love. There was a great book that I read. It was a Star Wars book, actually, and it was part of a series. It was small children's books, so they were really small and easy to read, but great writing and the lessons in there. And that was the first lesson from the first book, was that in order for the young Obi to defeat or at least take control of the situation and defeat the enemy without harming the enemy, was that exact way, was to convert the enemy to a friend through commonalities, through love, through this greater principle. And it was a fierce enemy, and eventually there was a way to convert the enemy to a friend, or at least to a neutral. And the secret to that whole teaching was that the real enemy, the real true enemy, was anger in each individual. And when you defeat your anger, there is no more enemy. Fascinating. I mean, it's all metaphorical. You can take this as you will. And it's all philosophical too, and mystical and spiritual. And it's supposed to help us have a better perspective in our lives. And not get so wrapped up on the details. if you want to explain why there is real enemies out there and we ought to have anger and fear, then that's up to you and how you choose to use your energy and your thoughts. Because what we think about, remember, the secret to the universe, which really is what you think about expands, and that becomes what you act upon. So choose your thoughts wisely, ladies and gentlemen. Thinking in alignment, Wayne Dyer continues, thinking in alignment with the Tao applies to any conflict you may experience. When you resort to force, then disputes with your spouse, your children, your business partners, and even your neighbors will continue to intensify. And I know we've all experienced that, surely. That's because the great way, the force that we're talking about, this divine universal intelligence, the great way of the Tao, is that of cooperation, harmony. Remember everything we've been learning in this series and the series of the wisdom of the ages, and everything I always talk about is that of cooperation and not competition. We have no investment in power and control over other things, unless maybe it is in our own harmony with our own life and destiny. And even then, that's more of a flowing rather than a controlling. It's like swimming with the current and being able to see the current too, and then being able to swim where it is you want to go in the current, while still recognizing that you have no control over the true whole current. Maybe that was a good metaphorical way to put that. Now, this all creating source is always providing, asking nothing in return, and coming from a place of sharing its inherent love. It knows that all are part of the 10,000 things. Remember, the Tao is not one of the 10,000 things. The Tao that remains nameless. We've been going back to this a few times in each of these videos lately, because I think this first verse is the most important. If I can find, there we go. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The Tao is both named and nameless. As nameless, it is the origin of all things. So think of the all things, everything in existence included in that nameless thing. As named, it becomes the mother, the creator of everything, the 10,000 things, quote unquote, that is everything that we think isn't one from our ego mind perspective or from our lower viewpoints. You know, you can look out and give a million names to a million different things and labels and, you know, categories and all of this, but it is all part of the great one thing. The confusion, the flowing, the force. See, that's why I like the way the Tao is described. Makes more sense to me about this great spirit, as Native Americans put it, I believe. Now, back to what we were saying here, that this part of the 10,000 things, it knows that everything is a part of the 10,000 things, and they must cooperate with each other because they share the same origin. So whenever you're in a mode that propels you in a direction of using force rather than cooperation or harmony, you've lost sight of your connection to the Tao, this great connector that is behind everything. It's fascinating because everything must cooperate in order to work as it is how we, you know, see and experience everything. Now, lost my spot again because they share the same origin. Moreover, any collection of people, such as communities or countries, who resort to weapons to get their points across are unattuned to the way, Wayne Dyer says. They'll leave the earth and the hearts of the people uninhabitable, except to briars and thorns. Your choice concerning your commitment to practicing the Tao includes refusing to participate in any manner, be it mental or physical, in anything that violates your understanding of the advice offered in this powerful passage. of the Tao Te Ching. And I would say the advice offered in this powerful book, the Tao Te Ching, and also this powerful book, giving us a greater understanding of each verse of the Tao in this series. But it's like, man, we have to put together an amalgamation of all the different wisdom that we can learn, because every one of these is a different key to unlocking the secrets of the universe, the keys to manifesting and the keys to unlocking the secrets of the universe, ladies and gentlemen, because that's what we're doing here on this channel. And if you're getting value, consider subscribing, leave me a comment and let me know what you think. Now, remember, see, it says, perhaps it's the easiest lesson presented here is the reminder to eschew the behaviors of boastfulness and pomposity for anything achieved or anything but achieved by force. Remember that whatever is accomplished in such a way creates a counter force. Powerful. That will ultimately result in your victory turning to a defeat. Interesting. If you somehow feel that you had no other choice than to use violence to protect yourself and those you love, immediately retreat to a position that does not allow for bragging and self-congratulation. Vow to work on restoring a balance of love where hatred previously resided, and do all that you can do to make amends for any change that resulted from your use of force. This is amazing little chapter here. It keeps making me think of power versus force. And, you know, it's like going from anger to peace, going from controlling to flowing. That'll be a good title if I can remember what I just said there. Now, what we're describing, this not using the force and not getting counter forces by using forces, but rather being in harmony, this is the way. It has been also called Wu Wei in great teachings, or not forcing. That just made me feel really good for some reason. The way has also been called Wu Wei, or not forcing. It makes me think allowing. Allow. Which means to take the line of least resistance in all of one's actions, and by doing so, create more strength. It's like water. Water always takes the line of least resistance, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great reference for this universal force. Here's what I believe you can learn and practice from Lao-tzu's advice in this 30th verse of the Tao Te Ching. Eliminate, number one, don't eliminate number one. But number one is eliminate verbal and or physical force in all situations. And see, if people that are used to using verbal force in all situations, they get very confused and upset when you remain silent. Because silence is a skill. And when you don't have a lot of good things to say, it's not very wise to continue to say a lot of things. In fact, it's much more wise to say nothing at all and, you know, contemplate why it is. That's the old lesson everybody knows. If you don't have nothing nice to say, then don't say nothing at all, ladies and gentlemen. And it might help us in our life to reach a higher point, a higher level, to where when we do say things, we begin choosing consciously to say things nice. Not just to say things nice, but to, you know, to like really change our own life by what it is that we decide to say. And then realize that you are deciding it in the first place. But that's a whole different lesson. I'm getting off topic. I do it all the time. Back to number one, ladies and gentlemen, of how we can learn and practice and begin to apply into our life practically the advice of Lao-tzu and Wayne Dyer in this 30th verse and this 30th chapter of the Tao Te Ching and living the wisdom of the Tao. Number one is eliminate verbal or physical force in all situations. Examine the relationships in which you experience conflict. Make a concerted decision to use less harsh language and to completely veer away from becoming physical in the resolution of any altercation. And it's funny how some people are naturally that way and some people are not. I've always been somebody who definitely subconsciously and naturally veers away from physical resolutions to any confrontation, which is odd. But I think it's good. Practice stopping thoughts of violence by shifting right in the moment to a stance of listening. See, that's the silent. You never come to know this great force without truly becoming silent. And being able to silence the thoughts of your mind is one of the great beginning challenges of this path of becoming a sage, a mystic, a spiritual person, somebody who experiences life at a much higher level, at a much higher quality, and gets the most out of it, hopefully. Hopefully, ladies and gentlemen. Because, I mean, if we spend all of our time doing all of these negative thoughts and negative actions, like people don't even want to be here anymore. And we could, see, that's the most fascinating thing. Some people say we're living in heaven already. And some people would also equally argue that we're living in hell too. And I would say the first one, because I know that you can choose to see whatever it is you want to see and be whatever it is you want to be experiencing. So it is both at the same time, because as we know throughout the paradoxical nature of unity and duality, which is what the Tao itself is, just like we described in the first verse, it is everything and at the same time one thing or no thing. Anyways, we're rambling again, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry. I hope you're really getting value out of this. These are great reminders, Wayne Dyer continues. He says, take that stance of listening. Bite your tongue if you have to, but don't bite it too hard. You don't want to get hurt. Stifle yourself. Hold back any response at all for the time being, because if you can avoid negativity, I'll add, it's really just way better off. Sometimes you do have to stay silent. These are great reminders to you to become attuned to the way. Remember, any act of force will definitely produce a counterforce. So if you insist on escalating devastation, your weapons will be turned back upon you. Powerful, ladies and gentlemen. Number two, refuse to participate in violent actions in any way. Create distance between any form of violence and yourself. Most importantly, I had to say it multiple times, this includes listening to the TV or radio reports of violence, or even pursuing newspaper articles about the uses of force and violence taking place all over the planet, all the time. Remember, you can see what it is you want to see, and you only have a limited amount of time to choose what it is that you want to think about. 24 hours in a day, ladies and gentlemen. Do you want to spend, how many ever of those hours all the time with negativity? I'm just like, it's your choice here. And it's serious. You got to see, sometimes you got to get serious about it, because people will say, oh, it's just your choice. Yeah. You're just talking about positivity and stuff. I'm like, if you're experiencing an unhappy life, you're probably, like serious about your unhappy life. You're probably not like, yeah, my life sucks and it's all, so when you're trying to get positive, you have to use the same energy. And we're not talking about force. We're talking about intensity, passion, purpose, ladies and gentlemen, because that's what will get you to the next level of neutrality and starting to feel comfortable, because you are strongly and diligently working on changing the negativity that you continue to experience all the time. Most people that are negative don't want to be told that they can choose positivity because there's not that much energy in it. Like, oh yeah, I'm just going to be positive. It's like, I'm pretty worked up right now. But it's like, no, use that energy and be serious about getting positive, because you can do it. You can be like, like intensely passionate about figuring this stuff out. And hearing, like, see if you're justifying. So that's what I was just talking about, justifying not wanting to learn the wisdom and enjoy your life more because you think there's no control over what it is that's going on in your mind, because I don't know, you're justifying hearing about or reading about hostile activities as a need, Wayne Dyer continues, to be fully informed. Like, oh, well, you can't just stick your head in the sand. I've heard that one before. Once you know that force is being applied anywhere and almost everywhere in the name of subjugating others, you'll realize that the constant repetition of that news makes you a participant in the violence. By refusing to allow such energy into your life, even as a passive observer, you keep yourself attuned to the way. Eventually, when enough of us are unwilling to tolerate such behavior in any form, we'll be closer to bringing an end to the use of force on our planet. Remember that every use of force, even in the smallest, creates a counterforce. Here's what a great 16th century poet, St. John, advises. You might quiet the whole world for a second if you pray. And if you really love, our guns will wilt. Fascinating one. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been quite the verse, quite the chapter, quite the video, quite different than what I expected. But at the end of every one of these verses and chapters and videos, there is what's called, what Wayne Dyer made, which is so wonderful, do the Tao now. A way for us to take these, mystical, up in the cloud, kind of philosophical, metaphorical ideas and try to put them into practical application and action into our daily lives. And so today, Wayne Dyer says, in the line with altering in line, see, I messed it up already. In line with altering the way you look at the world. Remember, change your thoughts, change your life, change what you see changes. Change what we started with, ladies and gentlemen. In line with altering the way you look at the world, today change every television channel and radio station that presents an image or audio of the use of force or violence. That should be the challenge every day. I mean, 2 years ago, everybody remembers that, well, probably all the time, the news got crazy. But a couple of years ago, the news got real crazy. And there was a great man by the name, well, I don't know his real name, but by the stage name of Rex Bear, Leak Project. And he sent out a challenge. And he said, right now, the news is giving everybody fear and, terror, freak out, fear for your life. And he was like, turn it off. I give you a 1-month challenge to not watch the news for 1 month and see what it does for you. See if you're as scared as you are now, if you feel as uncomfortable as you do now. And I did it, and I offered it to some people, and everybody knows that this works. And if you can do it for a month, you can do it for 4 months. You can do it for 6 months. You can probably do it for the rest of your life. And the people will try to justify it with, well, you won't have any idea what's going on. Like, really? Like, really? If you go out there and live your life and communicate with other people in your community, in real life, if you look out any window and any open door and see what's going on around you, as the great Bruce Hornsby once put it, and you can see what's going on, and you can live in reality, in a much higher place, I think, than some people choose to live manipulated with their thoughts. But once again, I got off topic. That's another different subject, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, though, for all who are still here enjoying this. If you're getting value, leave me a comment and smash the like button. Let me know what you think about all of these rants that I love to get into. And then Wayne Dyer continues, after turning off these television or radio stations that present any image or audio of the use of force or violence, then increase that no tolerance policy to include, oh, this is a great teaching, movies, videos, and games that have, he describes it as beatings, homicides, and chase scenes. But I'm like, all-encompassing negativity and the use of force and violence. And that's the end of the chapter there, ladies and gentlemen. That's a boom to knowledge, if there has ever been one. This whole book has been a boom to knowledge. And would you guess, next week's episode is called Living Without Weapons. That goes perfectly with today's verse. And it's so funny how this always becomes a philosophical, spiritual message rather than just talking about life. Rather than just talking about the physical world, we talk about real life, ladies and gentlemen. And like I said, I hope you got value. I really do. I appreciate everybody who spends time with me and Dr. Wayne Dyer and Lao-tzu, trying to discover the Tao, trying to change our thoughts and change our lives and live the wisdom of the Tao in our lives so that we can create a higher quality of life for not only ourselves, but those that we impact and influence and, you know, interact with, engage with in our entire lives, everyone around us, and create a better world, hopefully, ladies and gentlemen. And I don't just kind of say that, you know, like, oh, let's create a better world. I'm like, really, like, if people see you being the change that you want to see, there's another fluffy saying that means a ton. It's just gotten so used that everybody doesn't take it seriously. But if you're out there being the example of this optimistic, positive, getting through whatever struggles are presented to you with, you know, gusto and ability, you've cultivated the ability to live life at a little bit higher level every day. It's like you become I want to say a force, but that's what we're talking about not being. You become a harmonious, it's like when you put a light in a dark room, it starts to lighten up everything else around it. You know, there's great mystical teachers and sages that it's been said about them when you come into their presence, they kind of uplift everybody in the area. And, you know, I'm just saying there might be a way that we can be somewhat like that in our lives with people around us and make a better world, ladies and gentlemen. And if that sounds good to you, then sweet, I'm glad you're here. So continue to seek, to achieve, and maintain happiness through enlightenment. Continue to seek and discover the hidden wisdom of the ages, the wisdom of the Tao. Because, ladies and gentlemen, it is time. It is time for us to take control of our thoughts, take control of our lives, and start making happiness the way. Because when we can begin to make happiness the way, the goal, the destination becomes irrelevant. Because where we were trying to get is just as enjoyable as where we are now. And the whole journey becomes the destination. I love that little rant, and I hope you do too. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching. I love everybody and appreciate everybody. And I'll be back tomorrow with Wednesday Wisdom to bring your way.